Good evening, guys. Um, Thank you for joining me again. I know it's been a while since I last uploaded or featured a live stream about technology. I just found it
Good evening, guys.
relevant
Uh,
to discuss this
Thank you for joining me again. I know it's been a while since I last.
matter again. Sorry, may feedback. A few days ago, the president had his State of the Nation address. And aside from COVID 19, he addressed the issue of the Department of Education's blended learning program. And the new normal uh, really requires us to adapt to the need of the changing times. So, my topic is distance learning and affordable computer for learners using Raspberry Pi. As you all know, uh, to be to be part of a distance learning program, one of them would be through computer, through the internet. The learner is required to have some facility to be connected. So first is internet connection, and then the device. So it's either you have a computer or a mobile phone. However, it will be most effective if you have a computer because of the screen size and the various formats of the instructions that would be given. So a PC would be best. However, having said that, we all know that in our public education system, most of the students are uh, belonging to the poor, maybe lower middle class to the poor. So most of them have no access to computers. I mean, when I say access, I mean they don't own their own computer, and most computers are really expensive. So, what are the alternatives? I'd like to thank my sponsors first, Ryu Ramen and Curry. Do check them out on Facebook. They accept orders and pick up of orders. Naughty Cafe, the fastest growing milk tea franchise in the country, and Pan Pacific Airlines. Fly in style, fly Pan Pacific Airlines. Okay, the president did specifically mention during his State of the Nation address the following secretaries. They were given a direct order. If it's a military thing, it's a direct order, calling them by name and giving the instruction to explore all avenues to ensure that the blended learning program of the Department of Education under Secretary Leonor Briones would be successful. Now, this is not only limited to online education, but also to determine how to efficiently use TV spectrum and how to use broadcast as a complementary tool to the blended learning program. So, um, Secretary Minardo Guevara of the Department of Justice to ensure that every action would be in accordance with the law. The Department of Science and Technology under Secretary Fortunato de la Peña, Secretary Gregorio Honasan of the Department of Information Communication Technology, Secretary Wendell Avisado of the Department of Budget and Management, and Secretary Sunny Dominguez of the Department of Finance. So this is quite a solid group that can really address the problem on how to deliver the the distance learning initiative of the DepEd. So it's going to be a holistic collaboration of at least six relevant government agencies. So yeah, actually I mentioned it already. Through the internet, the challenge is to have a low-cost computer for all. That is in theory for all. But of course, if you can even get maybe 50 to 60% to distribute this kind of low cost computer, it's a big milestone already for the government. Good evening, Nico Shin Cruz. Thank you for joining. So I ran a calculation using Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is a low cost computer. It was specifically designed from the beginning to enable low income people to be empowered with the device of the internet. So it allows you to perform several things that could achieve productivity. So basic computing functionalities are there. It can also be used for multimedia. Now I have here four setups. I suggest we go for the setup number one or setup number two by keeping the cost down to around 6,000 pesos or less. So this is a full set already, and all the softwares are free. So the barrier of getting this kind of device is quite low. So to provide the basic setup, you just have to go to the website of Raspberry Pi and then have the operating system downloaded, which is indicated here for Windows. Because when you after downloading, you have to extract the software, the image file, to an SD card. And then once you have extracted the operating system to the SD card, you can now move the SD card and then plug it to the computer. Okay, I'll show you a video of how I did it. Okay, for a while. So this is the various Raspberry Pi. So the one encircled now is called the Raspberry Pi 1, one of the early models. I think this was 2014, 2013, I'm not sure. And then the Raspberry Pi or Raspberry Pi 3, which shares the same appearance. There's already a Raspberry Pi 4, which is quite powerful already or advanced. So, but we're not considering that for the specific purpose of distance learning. Okay, so the essential components. So you have the micro SD card. I have here the USB Wi-Fi. You have the option to connect via LAN also, but most people are using wireless, so I'd rather use the wireless Wi-Fi device. And then the typical mouse and keyboard. Now for the display, the good thing about Raspberry Pi, you have two options. The Raspberry Pi 1 series, the display output is the CBBS or the video out. So if you have an old CRT TV, you just have to connect it to your old TV, and then you're up and running. Now this version that I'm using, which is the Raspberry Pi 2, connects to an HDMI. So a few days ago, I told someone that they can utilize this, and the first thing uh, that was mentioned to me is that their TV is HDMI. So they're thinking of VGA connection. So I said this is perfect because the output is HDMI already. So in the video, the process of connecting each of the devices is quite straightforward. Okay, there's no danger of electrocution also because this is powered by a 5-volt supply, which means you can use your regular cable for your mobile phones if you're still using the uh, the micro USB terminal. So you can even have a power bank and then use the power bank to supply power to this device. So very convenient. So now I'm terminating the HDMI cable here. Okay. And then lastly, I'm going to show you the micro USB connector to power the device. This is my connector. Okay. So just plug it in. You'll notice also that I don't have a casing here for demonstration purposes. In the first part of the video, you've seen that the other two Raspberry Pis that I own have casing. So this is only as big as a cigarette pack. So ganun siya kaliit. So you can see it's powered now, and then I switch to my TV monitor. So it takes a few seconds lang for it to boot up. Hindi siya ganun katagal. Now, ayan, ready na siya. Okay. Now, in the interface, they made all efforts to make it familiar to a Windows interface so that a new user wouldn't find it difficult to adapt to the use of the device. So they also have yung parang start button. In this case, it's a Raspberry instead of a Windows. So it comes also with the LibreOffice. So it has an equivalent for Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft Database, and so on and so forth. It's fully functional. So they call it LibreOffice. So they just have a different name. But when you see the interface, the program itself, it looks very similar to what we have been accustomed to already. So this is the uh, Microsoft Word version for Raspberry Pi. It's called Libre Writer. They didn't use the word Word. Instead, it's Writer. So you can write your documents here. And yeah, it's pretty much the same. So I just used the default screen here. So it's easy to change naman later. So I'm going to type some text here as an example. And then I'm going to close because I'm going to open another program. I don't know if you can read what I'm typing here, but it is essentially about the topic that we're discussing now. So we'll just wait for this to be finished. Don't worry, hindi naman ganun kahaba yung tinype ko dyan. It's gonna be a short, I think it's just a paragraph. Okay, so I decided to close this application, and then now I'm going to open the Excel equivalent for LibreOffice. So it's quite literal. They use the word libre. So I'm sure in Spanish it's going to be the same. I'm just assuming it's quite perfect, diba? LibreOffice. So this is the interface. It's quite similar. So what I'm going to do now is to input an example. So I'll number maybe 1 to 20 and then put some figures. I use the select and drag down feature, which is usually done in Excel. So I tried it if it's gonna work here. So it works just fine. So on my second column, I'm gonna use the drag function again to create arbitrary numbers, random numbers, up to the C column. Okay, select and then drag again. And then on the D column, I'm going to perform a simple addition to show you that it does the same thing for calculation. Maybe I should spend time also exploring other features of this software. So what I'm doing now is just to sum the B1 and C1, and then select and drag down to have the complete operation. Next is the PowerPoint equivalent. So the first time I saw the PowerPoint equivalent, I was impressed immediately with the default layouts or the suggestions that you can use. So who knows, in the future I might make a permanent setup at home to do my word processing and presentation specifically on Raspberry Pi. So you have very nice design suggestions from the beginning. And I didn't know that I actually opened three windows during this trial, but it's fine. So I selected this one and then just made a sample title. So, diba? The design is quite eye-catching. And if you see the succeeding slides there, it's like an iris that slowly opens. So once you progress or you have multiple slides, then the iris becomes wider, and then the colors is spread onto the corners of the screen. So it's pretty nice, and the controls are displayed on the right side facing the screen. So it's easy to manipulate. Uh, but it's easy also in Microsoft PowerPoint. But the suggestive interface here is well appreciated. Of course, aside from your document, your spreadsheet, and your presentation, okay, because the teacher might send documents in those formats for the students. So you need to be able to open those attachments. So don't worry, this computer, this how do I call it? A mini computer or a micro computer would be able to address all of those issues. Now, of course, in order to connect, you might need to use a browser. So it comes with Chromium or the default browser of Raspberry Pi. So in this case, I used Chromium, uh, I guess the browser now for Windows 10. So I opened YouTube. So maybe the teacher is streaming through YouTube. So you can connect and watch YouTube also. Now, in case there's a series of lessons that have been uploaded by your professor, so you can link to the YouTube channel and try to catch up on some of the lessons. So in this case, I opened my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe and like my channel so that I'll be motivated to do more educational stuffs. I've already uploaded several educational stuffs there. It's James Rodney Santiago on YouTube. So I think I have 16 episodes already. So YouTube is one thing. And then if your teacher decides to go to Facebook, since it is in a browser, so there should be no problem at all. Yep. So Facebook works also. You just have to sign up. Oh, sorry, sign in. Most people have their own Facebook accounts naman. And then you can also access your Gmail account. So here I will just terminate it because I don't want to show people some of the emails that I get. So it's quite private. So I didn't allow Gmail to fully load, and I just terminated it. because I want to hide yung sa Gmail ko. Okay? Now we will go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. So I would like to appeal for those people who are well off in life, uh, in order for us to help also uh, the government and the young students to be capable of accessing educational materials online. I guess it's not much if you could donate 5 sets. I mean, from the price that I've shown earlier, we're talking of a 5,000 peso to 6,000 peso for a complete set. So I guess it doesn't uh, take much from your excesses if you could donate to some of the poorest students in your community. So it's maybe one of the noblest thing that we can do to help other people. And anyway, the original purpose of Raspberry Pi really is to make it affordable for everyone and to specifically use it as a learning tool. And this device is actually engineered from the beginning to teach young people and maybe older people the beauty of programming. So there are added softwares that you can use to allow you to learn an extra skill in programming. So thank you very much for tuning in. And if you have questions, my email is pececonsultant@gmail.com. I'm your facilitator, speaker, James Ron Santiago. Thank you very much for joining and do subscribe and like and see you to my next episode. Thank you.